live on YouTube's. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm Dr. Darrell Green. I'm going to be your webinar leader. I'm going to be your motivator. I'm going to be your encourager. We're going to have a great time today. So I'm going to be talking about employment trends. But before I get started, I want to first thank the leadership of St. John Missionary Baptist Church for sponsoring this event, to Pastor Dr. Major Jemison, to Dr. Lawrence Kirk, the Christian Education Director. I want to thank Ms. Deborah Johnson, Parish Fellowship Director. I want to thank Marcus for being our producer, for doing such a great job. So we're online. Yes, we're online. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube. What I'm going to ask you first, like us. Come on, like us. And if we are going to be doing more and more content that's reaching out to the community, that's reaching out across the world, we ask that you follow us. Please consider that. We are going to make available at a later date this presentation so that you can download it on our website or on our YouTube, or on, I guess I would say, on our Facebook channel. You'll have opportunity to do that. So one of the things, this employment trends is very important. You might say, how did I get involved in that? So back in 1998, myself and my wife, we were looking at, there was going to be a downsizing in our agency. We both work with the Department of Energy. And they were trying to see what was going to happen. Being the youngest ones in the organization, we were the top of the list to get laid off. And I was thinking to myself, certainly I'm not too proud to go do landscaping, dig ditches to make my wife, for our family. But we decided, hey, we have a degree. Let's consider some other options. And what we decided to do was grow our own business in terms of that. So that is really what we got into. The other part of that is that in working for the Department of Energy, I also had the opportunity to go across the country recruiting students. There was a major disconnect between what students thought employers wanted and what actually employers wanted. There was a big, we call it a chasm there between them. And so myself, Mr. William Bailey, we wrote a book, Job Strategies for the 21st Century. And in that book, we gave new strategies on how to be competitive. And the landscape it's changed so much. It used to be a social contract. Though that is no longer the case. And so this employment trends, game-changing predictions for 2021, I believe if you watch this, it's going to be life-changing. So one of the things I want to do before I'm going to get deeper, I want to know where you're at. So I want to know where you're located. So in the chat space, let us know where you're at. Are you in Spain? Or are you in South America? Are you in Detroit? Are you in New Orleans? Are you in the East Coast, West Coast? I would just want to know that. Give us that feedback. So we're going to cover again tonight the agenda. Today's agenda. We're going to cover all these areas. We're going to try to. This is online. We're going to try to keep it brief and concise. But we're going to try to cover those things that are relevant for you. Those individuals that are trying to make some decisions on that. Who am I? Again, my name is Dr. Darrell Green. I'm originally from Shreveport, Louisiana. I went to school, Southern University in Baton Rouge. I met my wife, Esther Lita. I was a mechanical engineer. She was a civil engineer. We have three adult children, Mario, Shalita, and Demetrius. Have 3 grandchildren. Spent 27 years working for the Department of Energy, managing nuclear and non-nuclear projects. Got a chance to make some pivots. I went back and got my doctorate degree, and I was able to pivot. Now, I've been also, what I think is relevant, that most of my academic world has been working with adult learners. What does that mean? Some individuals that want a better life. Do you want a better life? And this is really what we're talking about. So in terms of introduction, I'm going to ask you a question. And you don't have to put it in the chat room. Are you at a crossroads in your life? Do you like where your career is headed? COVID-19 taught us a lot. Now, I know a lot of people don't want to go back to 2020. Well, what did we learn? First of all, we learned that as business, if you don't have an online presence, you don't exist. That was a major key. But also, companies found a reality. Most managers did not want, if you're a white-collar worker, they did not want you to work, they didn't want you to work at home until COVID. Then you were allowed to work at home. And so this whole concept of working remotely has now become a reality. But here's something else I think was strange about COVID-19. So think about this, your lawyers, think about this. There were certain individuals, because they were white collar, they had engineering degrees, they were considered to be essential. But when COVID came along, we had a new normal. Now you have people who are making minimum wage, they're in the restaurants, they're in the nursing fields, they're becoming the line workers. So the whole definition of what we consider essential had changed. So this whole concept of what we're dealing with right now, I'm going to tell you, COVID was not the major issue. A lot of problems that we had, structural problems we had them before COVID. And what I'm talking about is what we call disruption. What is disruptive change? So what is disruptive change? So as a manager, we like change to be slow and predictable. We can take our time and we can make adjustments. But when you're dealing with disruptive change, change is uncertain, change is unpredictable, and that's really what has caused us the problem that we have, that disruptive change that we don't plan. Why am I saying that? Because sometimes your experience becomes your liability under disruptive change in terms of that. So welcome to the new normal. So here's the good, the bad, and ugly about 2020. There were some winners and losers under COVID. The COVID impacts on the U.S. economy. There were winners and losers. So who were the losers? Think about the travel industry, the tourist industry, your hotels, your airlines, your cruise ships. It's going to take them a long time to recover. A long time to recover. Think about that. I want you to think about retail. Who are the winners? Certainly we look at the food industry, and we certainly look at certain areas like restaurants, that transportation, those things were all important factors. So I'm going to talk about 7 employment trends, is what I'm going to cover, that's going to actually help us understand the new employment world. But before I do that, I got to set the stage so that you understand what is really going on. So I want you to imagine you're in a room. There are 6 chairs, and there are 7 people standing by those chairs. And then we hear music. As the music plays, they go around and around and around those chairs until you have less chairs and you have more people. So this plays out over and over and over and over again until there are 2 people and there's 1 chair. So now the music is louder. They're marching slower because they know there's only 1 chair. And finally, as the story ends, there's 1 chair and 1 person. So you know this as musical chairs, but I know this as a law of scarcity. So what am I saying? As resources become more limited, they become more valuable. So what am I saying? People get angry when I say this. They get angry because they're in a job and they're seeing people getting laid off. People getting laid off in the numbers. At the same time, the company is hiring people. So what is happening? What is happening is what we call the skill. There's different skills. And that's why the whole challenge of universities. So if you are a university that's teaching your top 100 university, and you're teaching your students word processing, I mean, you're the top school, you're teaching word processing, but there is no demand for that. And that's really why this webinar is important. So let's look at these employment trends right now. So the scenario we're going to cover is global markets, AI. We're going to talk about a hybrid model, freelancing, digital marketing. Digital and e-commerce, changing career landscapes, and continued learning. And hopefully we'll have time. I want to take your questions. So if you have questions as I go, please put them in the chat. We call them engagement coordinators that are working very diligently to help us out. So global markets. So here's the thing. Companies are in the business of making money. So when politicians start talking about we're gonna start all these companies to create jobs, that is a misnomer. Companies are in the business of making money. And so what they're doing, they're looking at emerging places, okay? They're going to Africa and Brazil and other areas because how many Cokes can we drink? How many Cokes can we drink? And so they're doing that. The other thing, this whole thing about global markets, this whole thing about globalization, we're all connected. COVID-19 showed us that we're connected. What happens in China can help us in Utah, Texas. It matters. So what am I saying? So now, as a company, I am not bound by boundaries. I can go anywhere across the world and find talent. And what am I saying? So in the 80s, what happened in the 80s? Companies were downsizing. They would take somebody who was in their 40s or mid-career and replace them by a young college student. Then we got into the 90s and above. What have we started doing? We started outsourcing. Sometimes we would outsource within the United States, but a lot of times we've done outsourcing by other countries, India and some of the other countries. That is reality, okay? So this whole thing about global, we need to start thinking. So here's what the error of the mistakes that most employees make. They believe, and even students, they believe I'm competing with people in my city, in my area. The reality is you're competing against people all across the world. All across the world are all vying for those same jobs. And I've seen this. For every one job, there are 1,000 people applying on it. So that is, and global markets have made this more difficult. And I don't believe personally, I know we talk about protecting us and all these other things. I think globalization is upon us. I think it's hard to back up and do it, and maybe it's me. I think it's very difficult. If you look at the demographics changes because of different places, people coming into America, those things are just a reality that's going to continue to grow and become dynamic. Here's one that really struck my attention. You read about it in comic books, you see it on TV. Sci-fi. AI is coming to take our jobs. Well, I'm going to let you know that is not the future, that is today. Automation is all around us. So here's the other thing that companies realize. Go back to COVID. What does companies also realize? I don't need as many people. And here's the reality. If we go to $15 an hour or we go up, most small business can't take that. And most larger companies are going to say, you know what, I'm going to automate. Well, Dr. Green, what do you mean? 20 or 30 years ago, walk into Walmarts. Look at the number of cashiers at Walmarts. Go to the same Walmart today, not a lot of cashiers. Everything is automated. That's what we're moving to. If you go the drive-through at McDonald's, you're going to see less people. We're moving toward animation. Here's the thing about artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence has to do with machines doing some of the tasks that people do. According to a study that was done by Oxford in 2013, they predict that nearly half of American jobs are at risk from being taken over by computers. Okay, so that is important. So in talking about artificial intelligence, what's a big deal? Anything that's routine can be automated. I want you to think about this. Anything that's routine, you do it, can be automated. And the example that I'm going to give you is the manufacturing companies. I think is a good example of that. More than 5 million manufacturing jobs have been lost since 2000. 80% of those jobs, about 4 million of them, were due to automation. So again, anything that can be repetitive, that can be routine, can be replaced. So what am I saying, Dr. Green? White collar, what can be replaced? Doctors, lawyers, accountants, wealth advisors, traders, and journalists. All these things can be replaced. Matter of fact, AI is right now is already writing articles in newspapers. I have a friend, from a shout out to Ray in Shreveport that work for FedEx. He said they're already using autopilot. So these things are becoming, and so who's in danger? Uber drivers, truck drivers. There's going to be a lot of things to think about. So now, in thinking about this, you have to think about what jobs are going to be in demand. So again, artificial intelligence is certainly going to be a trend. The new work model, don't have to say much about this. COVID showed us that now I can work from home. But how is this life changing? When I was doing a evaluation, dealing with a business accreditation, I met a guy at a university, and the university was, I think, in Indiana, up north, and he was from Georgia, and he had negotiated his contract. Well, he spent, even though it's a full-time job, most of his living was going to be done in Georgia. What am I saying? So I could be living in Florida and be working in the Dakotas, because most of the things that we're doing right now is remote. That is life changing. So I don't have to leave my home. I could be based in one area and work for a larger company. So that's going to be life changing in terms of that. This whole new work model. So this whole new work model consists of working remotely and working on site is what we're looking at. So freelancing, my goodness. When we talk about freelancing, I want you to think about gig economy. So like a gig, like I'm a musician, I'm playing on a gig. It's considered contract work. More than 90% of the United States are thinking about doing that. And when we talk about that, you might think about Uber, you might think about Lyft, you might think about Airbnb, but I'm going to challenge you. I want you to think about engineering. I want you to think about finance, bookkeeping. All those things can be done. And if you live in a place like California, Texas, New York, Florida, Illinois, they offer the best opportunities to be remote workers. It says that 57% of contract workers work more than 40 hours per week. So that's one thing you might consider. The downsides of being a freelancer is that most people that do the freelance work in the gig economy don't have any benefits. So that is a downside. So what you're seeing, more people doing it. I've met people traveling. They were Uber drivers, and they gave up working for individuals because they want that independence. The downside is that you lose benefits. But I think because of people going to be laid off, and I do believe 2021 is going to be a challenge, that freelance might be an option because most companies try to go after individuals that are working and not unemployed. So also digital platforms, I mentioned, if you don't have an online presence, you don't exist. Most companies were forced to go into e-commerce. I see that continuing and only growing. And so website development is going to be a big deal. So changing careers, we talk about this. People are going to be changing careers. Landscape, I think, is already happening just because of the nature. Again, pivoting from one career to the next. Like I did, I went from engineering, education. Now I'm doing consulting with small businesses. You can make that pivot. People are doing this, going to be doing this on a continuous basis all across the country. Continuous learning. So this is what I get all the time. Dr. Green, I'm in high school. I hate school. I don't want to go back to school. But when you're dealing with artificial intelligence, we're doing all this technology. If you don't keep up, you're going to be behind. And that is going to be a big area that's continuing to grow. But you got to say continuous learning. Do I need to spend $100,000 to go to a university? That is the pivot point. So you have to decide based on that. You know, a lot of individuals, Gen Z, individuals born in 1996 are opting to take school at home, maybe go to community college. So you got to think, I need this learning. How do I get it? Do I get it from Udemy? Do I get it from YouTube's? But that's going to be a major issue. Actually, for universities and learning institutions. Here's the other thing: LinkedIn.com has also started offering courses. So let's look at that. So what is the new employment picture? Don't want to spend a lot of time on this. The whole thing, I tell my students, people get hired by 3 scenarios. Relationships, they get it through work experience and education. So if you have all 3, it's better. So in the new work environment, companies, there are surplus individuals, so companies now can be very picky on who they select. So what am I saying? So in order to, I call plug and play. In order to do the job, you've had to do the job. And so what has happened, you have students coming out of college competing with individuals that have 20 and 30 years experience. Why? Because that guy that's, you got a job that's $30,000, you got several young people that are coming out of college graduating, and you got a guy who's makes over $100,000. He travels 7 days a week. He never sees his kid. He never sees his wife, and he's tired. So he's willing to take a lower entry level job. Why is the company? Of course, he's overqualified, but companies say, you know what? The economy's bad. The guy's going to at least stay here at least a year or 6 months, and we can depend on him. We can depend on him. That is important. So that is a new employment model. If you don't have any work experience, it doesn't count. What I tell my students is that companies generally don't care where you get your work experience. Some things that I've done as volunteer has actually pivoted me to opportunities like working at a university. So that is a new employment model that will exist. Again, there are predictions that have been made by the United States Bureau of Labor, and the biggest industry that's going to see an increase, according to them, is healthcare. But at the same time, they're saying that this model that they use does not include COVID. So what am I saying? Think about COVID. So let's think about what happened in 2020. Hospitals, because of COVID, had to shut down. What did they do? They furloughed nurses, they furloughed doctors, those individuals. So you have to be very careful in terms of looking at the landscape. So now, let's talk about the best emerging jobs. I'm just going to highlight it. Again, artificial intelligence. I told you it's the wave of the future. So what am I saying? You need to be engaged in that. That's going to be a high growth area, I think, over the next several years. The other one is data. How do you collect data? Those are also going to be high landscape, and those are other areas to think about. So this is mostly for individuals that have a degree. So Dr. Green, I don't want to go to college. What about other options? You have other options. Let's look at those. So now we're talking about what are some jobs you can do without a degree. The first one I want to talk about, you got to have some education. So maybe you go to a community college or trade school. But I think one of the hottest things is a drone specialist. So you think about what the drones are doing. And my daughter got married in 2018. The photographer had a drone. I was amazed at the photos. But you think about companies like Amazon and UPS, they're gonna reinstitute or redevelop how drones are getting utilized. Again, you have other areas, but I do think, looking at those areas, I think event planners are gonna be hot because we're stuck at our house. People are trying to, how do you get that social connection people want? And so those are some areas to look at. So I'm frustrated. Dr. Green, what is the ideal job? I'm going to get through this. So for most of us, most people have an occupation. And the occupation is basically how do you pay the bills. But in the medieval days, people had a special calling. They had a special calling on their life. A vocation is really your gifts, your talents, your abilities, and their fit. Most people don't go after their vocation, they go after their job. So you have to decide, where do I really want to go in life, given that I'm dealing with COVID-19 situations. So here's my formula that I use, that I share with everyone that I meet. What is the ideal job? You might want to write this down. It is your interest. So what I really enjoy, what I like to do, that's important. What about my abilities? Do I have the skills? So I think I want to be a doctor, but I hate math. You know what? I don't think you might have a chance. So let me ask you this: those that are on YouTube Live and on Facebook Live, what is your ideal job? Do you know that? Write it down right now. What is your interest? What do you really enjoy? Write that down for us. The other point is, what skills do you think you have? And if you don't know, what you need to ask your best friend or family members. The other part of this, you might make a lot of money and be unhappy, and that causes a lot of stress. So we need to balance that. So that's the ideal job. So then, what are the characteristics of a 21st century person that's going to do well in this market? Personal branding, and I think I had a question on that. Personal branding is important. Being optimistic, being entrepreneurial means looking at problems and opportunities, being a good communicator, and being flexible are some of the key areas I would really like to highlight. So after hearing this presentation and hearing all this doom and gloom, you might say, "Oh my goodness, it is hopeless." But I'm saying there's always hope. There's always hope. I want to leave you with. So I just want to kind of cover this very quickly, that when opportunities meet talent, you have success. So you might have an individual, you need both of those. You need opportunities and talent. You might have an individual that has lots of opportunities, maybe the Kardashians. I don't know what their talent is, but they have tons of opportunities. So that's one case. But you might want to look at Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson, Gary Allen, was unknown. Somebody found him. He has the opportunity. He has the talent. So you want to be what opportunities cross talent. So that is very important, very important. So now, here are some action steps. You might say, "Dr. Green, you gave me all of this. What is the next step?" Here are the next steps. Here are some actionable steps you can take. First of all, if you have a skill and maybe you're in a job that you hate or don't like or want you to improve, you can always use your expertise and help. Like our church, like I say, they probably need for social media. Probably need individuals who can do social media, people that can do logistics. The church needs those services. I mean, and you will be blessed by gaining those skills. The other one is developing your brand. Hopefully next quarter, I'm going to be doing something on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is hot. Again, LinkedIn, 80% of the employment recruiters, they go to LinkedIn, either get referrals or find something. I get hit a lot because of my skill set. You can too. The other one is learning opportunities. Take those learning opportunities that you can get, being invaluable to your current employer, and building relationships. I call it strategic alliances as opposed to just networking. So that means I'm getting something and you getting something. And I think it's better than I want something and you get none. You want to build long-term relationships. And I've gotten jobs not because it was not available, it was not shown in newspapers or anywhere. It's because I had the relationship with those individuals. Again, effective resumes, data mining. The one thing that I want to mention, apply consistently and frequently. I have to deal with my students. I always deal with clients. You have to be consistent. I say between 50 to 100 jobs you need to apply on each month. You got to be hungry. And you want to make sure that you practice, and your practice it looks good, and it is available. Okay, here's some resources. Again, Indeed, Glassdoor is one of the resources that I highly encourage. Those individuals that are looking to get an academic job, you might want to be a coach, or you might want to be a curriculum developer. You can go to higher ed jobs. You want to work in the government sector. You can't beat USAjobs.com. I think it's a great opportunity for you in terms of that. So now I'll take some questions. Do we have any questions yet?
Not so far.
So I have some questions. So let's go through them. Here's a question from anonymous person. He said, "It is so important, meaning employment trends. How do you build relationships to connect with people to get your future job?" Great question. How do you build networks? Well, I think it starts with your circle. So the first thing you need to think about is you might have to get out of your comfort zone. You might have to get out of your comfort zone and reach out to other individuals. I think that's important. And it starts with your inner circle. You know, who they know. We believe in 6 degrees of freedom and building those. And I try to encourage my students, alumni, church members, people. If you, maybe you went to Pee Wee, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, building those relationships because they grew. So that's one thing you can do. Another question, and I think this is a great question. How can I build good relationships while in the midst of COVID-19? Great question. You still got to communicate. You still got to work with people, and you still so the same principles before COVID is now prudent. You want to make sure you're respectful. You want to make sure you're the kind of people that you're the kind of person that people trust. All those kind of things that matter. Another question: what is the best way to build relationships in the digital world? It's the same. Great question. It's the same as in the real world. Again, building trust, being organic, being authentic. Being someone that people want to be around, I think is important. Another question, if experience sets everyone apart, how can you get hired if you don't have much of any experience? Again, you got your church, you got your community organizations. If you're in school, you can join business organizations like Enactus. You have Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. Get involved. Again, so here's the thing I always say. Everyone wants to be outstanding, but no one wants to stand out. Now we're dealing with the new normal. You don't need to stand out with so many people unemployed and trying to work and find things to do.
Sell yourself.
You got to sell yourself. Amen. So any other questions? So if you have more questions, you can always contact the church. You can always email me. I have a website. Again, I would ask that if you enjoyed the presentation, that you follow it, you like it on both of those applications, because the church, we're just trying to make a difference. And everyone can make a difference. Again, there's hope. There's so much misinformation. And I just want to let you know the truth, that it's going to be very difficult, that you're going to have those right kind of characteristics to move forward, okay? But we trust God that He'll do all those things. So I'm going to end this with a story. In Louisiana, in Natchitoches, there was a farm. And on that farm, there was a chicken coop. And in the chicken coop, there were tons of chickens. So something happened, some bizarre thing had happened, and there was an eagle egg that rolled into that chicken coop. And those chickens saw that. They said, "You know what? We're gonna be in trouble. We can't let that eagle know it's an eagle, or we're gonna be food for somebody. We have to convince that eagle that it's a chicken." So the egg hatched. It was a beautiful bald eagle. But the chickens tricked it. So he started eating, talking, and walking like a chicken, talking like a chicken. But one day, can you say one day?
One day.
One day, there was a massive bird hovering over that farm. It was a bald eagle. It was huge. And you know what chickens do? They were scattering. They were running. The bald eagle knew what was up. He came down with his long wings, and he grabbed that little eagle. He went up to the sky. He talked to the little eagle. He said, he knew what was going on. He said, "Little eagle, I know they've told you that you are a chicken. But little eagle, you're not a chicken, you're an eagle." So Dr. Green, break that down to me. I will. Maybe you grew up in a chicken household. You had chicken parents. You graduated from chicken high school. And maybe you went to college and you got a chicken degree. And you're working in a job you hate with a boss that's a chicken. Your job is a chicken. But I want to let you know something now. On Facebook Live and YouTube Live, you're not a chicken. You're an eagle. So you've been given all the tools that'll make you successful. I pray that you will take heed and do the best you can. Have a wonderful and blessed day.